Jennifer stopped less than 6 feet away from Emily and folded her arms. Up close, the contrast between them seemed even sharper. Jennifer's tailored navy suit and expensive accessories projected authority, while Emily's simple cardigan made her appear completely out of place among the executives moving through the corridor. "Can I help you?" Jennifer asked. The words sounded polite, but the tone beneath them carried something very different. Emily offered a calm smile. "I'm just looking around." Jennifer glanced toward the restricted executive offices behind her. "Looking around?" she repeated. "This floor is not open to visitors." Emily nodded slightly. "I understand." Jennifer studied her for another moment. "Are you interviewing for a position?" Emily considered the question. "Something like that." Jennifer let out a short laugh. "Well, whoever scheduled your meeting should have informed you that candidates wait downstairs." Emily simply listened. Years of experience had taught her that people often revealed themselves when given enough room to speak. Jennifer pointed toward the elevator lobby. "Human Resources is on the 12th floor. Someone can help you there." Before Emily could answer, Jennifer's tablet vibrated. She glanced at the screen, then back at Emily. "Actually, I am late for a leadership meeting." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Do not wander into any restricted areas." With that, Jennifer turned and disappeared through a set of glass doors. Emily watched her leave. Then she quietly pulled a small leather notebook from her handbag and wrote a few words. Not accusations, not judgments, just observations. Respectfully dismissive. Assume status based on appearance. No attempt to verify identity. She closed the notebook and continued her walk through the building. Over the next hour, Emily visited several departments. In customer support, she observed a supervisor patiently helping a struggling employee improve a presentation. In accounting, she noticed coworkers sharing resources and encouraging one another. Those moments made her smile. Not everything she saw concerned her. Yet as she moved through other areas, a different picture began to emerge. In marketing, two managers openly mocked a junior employee after she left a conference room. In operations, a team leader took credit for work completed by someone else. Small things. Easy things to overlook. But culture was built from small things. Every interaction mattered. Near noon, Emily entered the employee cafe. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the room. Conversations filled the air. Employees gathered around tables discussing deadlines, promotions, and office rumors. Emily purchased a bottle of water and sat quietly near a window overlooking downtown Chicago. She had barely opened her notebook when a voice interrupted her. "Excuse me." Emily looked up. A young woman stood beside the table carrying a lunch tray. She appeared nervous. "Would you mind if I sat here?" Emily smiled warmly. "Not at all." The woman introduced herself as Rachel Miller, a customer support specialist who had joined the company less than a year earlier. Unlike others Emily had encountered, Rachel spoke to her without assumptions or judgment. They spent several minutes talking about the city, work, and career goals. Rachel's kindness felt genuine. But halfway through their conversation, the atmosphere in the cafe suddenly shifted. Conversations softened. Several employees straightened in their chairs. Heads turned toward the entrance. Jennifer Brooks had arrived. And the moment her eyes landed on Emily sitting comfortably among employees, an expression of irritation crossed her face. Emily noticed it immediately. So did everyone else. A quiet tension settled over the room. Somewhere deep inside, Emily sensed that this was only the beginning. Jennifer walked into the employee cafe carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most important person in every room. Conversations immediately softened as employees noticed her presence. Some straightened in their chairs. Others lowered their voices. Jennifer acknowledged them with brief nods before her attention locked onto Emily sitting across from Rachel Miller. The irritation in her eyes sharpened instantly. She crossed the room without hesitation. Rachel noticed her approaching and immediately looked uncomfortable. "Rachel," Jennifer said, stopping beside the table. "Do you have nothing to work on this afternoon?" Rachel blinked. "I am on my lunch break." "Then perhaps you should spend it preparing for tomorrow's client review instead of socializing." Rachel lowered her eyes. "Of course." Emily watched the exchange quietly. Rachel gathered her tray and offered Emily an apologetic smile before standing. "It was nice meeting you." "Likewise," Emily replied warmly. As Rachel walked away, Jennifer remained standing over the table. "You again." Emily nodded politely. "Hello." Jennifer glanced at the empty chair Rachel had occupied. I thought I made myself clear earlier. About? Emily asked. Jennifer let out a slow breath as though she were speaking to someone difficult. This building is a workplace, not a lounge for people wandering around without authorization. Several nearby employees pretended not to listen while listening very carefully. Emily noticed every glance, every expression, every reaction. I assure you I have authorization to be here, she said calmly. Jennifer laughed softly. Interesting. She pulled out a chair and sat across from Emily. Then tell me your department. Emily remained silent for a moment. I am still evaluating that. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. Evaluating. A few employees exchanged confused looks. Jennifer leaned back and folded her arms. You realize that answer makes absolutely no sense. Emily simply smiled. That smile irritated Jennifer more than any argument could have. She was accustomed to people becoming nervous around her, apologizing, explaining themselves, trying to gain approval. Emily did none of those things. Who is your manager? Jennifer asked. I have not decided yet. A few muffled laughs came from a nearby table. Jennifer smiled triumphantly. There it is. She looked around the cafe. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have someone who has not quite figured out how corporate structures work. Several employees laughed politely. Others looked uncomfortable. Emily remained composed. Jennifer turned back toward her. Let me explain something. Hawthorne Technologies values professionalism. We have standards. Here. Her eyes moved deliberately across Emily's cardigan and handbag. Those standards exist for a reason. The implication hung in the air. Emily understood exactly what Jennifer meant. So did everyone else. A hush settled across the room. Jennifer continued. If you are here for an interview, human resources can assist you. If you are a visitor, security can help you locate the exit. More nervous laughter followed. Emily slowly reached for her bottle of water and took a sip. Her calmness seemed almost unnatural under the circumstances. Jennifer expected embarrassment. Instead, she found herself growing increasingly frustrated. Across the room, several employees watched with concern. Rachel stood near the doorway, clearly wanting to intervene but afraid to do so. Emily opened her notebook after setting down the bottle. Jennifer's eyes narrowed. Are you taking notes? Emily looked up. I like to remember important interactions. Jennifer smirked. Trust me, nobody here is going to forget this interaction. She stood from her chair and straightened her jacket. I have a leadership meeting upstairs. When I return, I expect this situation to be resolved. Then she looked directly at Emily and delivered the sentence that would later haunt her career. Some people simply do not belong in executive spaces. The room went completely silent. Jennifer turned and walked away without another word. Emily watched her disappear through the cafe doors. Then she calmly wrote another line inside her notebook. Leadership defined by exclusion. The pen paused for only a second before she closed the notebook once again. After leaving the cafe, Jennifer headed toward the executive floor, convinced she had handled the situation exactly as she should. In her mind, the unfamiliar woman represented a disruption, someone who did not fit the polished image she believed the company should project. What Jennifer failed to understand was that every word she spoke was revealing far more about herself than the person she was trying to belittle. Meanwhile, Emily continued her quiet tour of Hawthorne Technologies. The afternoon sun stretched across the glass walls as she moved through department after department, observing not only procedures and performance, but something far more valuable: character. In the sales division, she watched a manager congratulate himself for closing a major account, while barely acknowledging the team members who had spent weeks preparing the proposal. In another department, she noticed an employee struggling to carry several large presentation boards. 3 coworkers walked past without offering assistance. Then a 4th employee immediately stepped forward to help. Emily wrote down both observations. Good leadership and poor leadership often existed side by side. The difference was whether anyone paid attention. Around 2 o'clock, she entered a conference area where preparations were underway for an executive planning session scheduled later that afternoon. Employees hurried in and out carrying laptops, reports, and refreshments. Nobody recognized her. Nobody questioned her presence. At least not at first. Emily stood near a table reviewing a company brochure when a voice called out from across the room. You there? She looked up. A senior operations manager named Greg Lawson pointed toward a stack of binders. Those need to go into conference room A. Emily glanced at the binders. I am afraid I cannot help with that. Greg frowned. Why not? Because I am not assigned to this project. Greg looked irritated. Neither am I, but somebody has to do it. Several employees nearby chuckled. Emily offered a polite smile and stepped aside. Greg muttered something under his breath before carrying the binders himself. A few minutes later, another employee approached her. Can you make sure fresh coffee gets brought into the boardroom? Emily looked at him calmly. I do not work in hospitality services. The man blinked. Then what exactly do you do here? Emily smiled. I am learning. That answer generated several confused looks and a few laughs. Throughout the afternoon, similar moments continued. Employees assumed she was an assistant. Others believed she was temporary staff. One executive even handed her a marker and asked her to update a scheduling board. Every assumption carried the same message. They saw her. Appearance first and everything else second. Emily accepted each interaction without argument. She simply recorded them. The notebook inside her handbag was slowly filling with observations. Names, behaviors, decisions, attitudes. None of the employees realized they were participating in an evaluation far more important than any annual review. Then shortly before 3 o'clock, Jennifer appeared again. This time she was accompanied by several managers. The moment she spotted Emily standing near the executive conference rooms, her expression darkened. You are still here? She asked loudly enough for others to hear. Conversations immediately slowed. Employees nearby exchanged glances. Jennifer walked closer, clearly frustrated that her earlier comments had been ignored. I thought I made myself very clear. Emily met her gaze. You did. Then why are you wandering around executive areas? Jennifer demanded. The room grew quieter. More employees stopped what they were doing. Emily could feel dozens of eyes turning toward them. Jennifer smiled coldly, as if she believed she was finally about to put an end to the situation. What she did not realize was that every person watching was about to witness the company reveal its true face. Jennifer folded her arms and waited, clearly expecting Emily to apologize, leave, or finally explain herself. Instead, Emily simply stood there with the same calm expression she had maintained all day. That composure only made Jennifer more determined to assert control. Around them, employees lingered near conference rooms, pretending to work while quietly observing the confrontation. I asked you a question, Jennifer said. Why are you still here? Emily glanced around the floor before answering. I have found the day very educational. Several employees exchanged puzzled looks. Jennifer laughed sharply. Educational. Yes, Emily replied. I have learned quite a bit about the company. The answer irritated Jennifer immediately. You have learned about the company? She repeated. From what exactly? Emily met her eyes. From the people. The room grew quieter. Something about Emily's tone made a few employees uncomfortable. Not because she sounded angry. Quite the opposite. She sounded thoughtful, as if she had already reached conclusions no one else understood. Jennifer stepped closer. Let me save you some time. This company is built by professionals. People who earn their place here. Emily nodded. I agree. Jennifer smiled as though she had won the exchange. Then perhaps you also understand that not everyone belongs in leadership environments. Emily remained silent. Jennifer mistook the silence for surrender. What she failed to recognize was that silence often reveals more than arguments ever could. Throughout the afternoon, Emily had witnessed examples of both excellence and failure. She had watched employees support one another without seeking recognition. She had seen managers encourage younger staff members and help them grow. But she had also seen something else. Fear. Employees lowering their voices when certain executives approached. Talented workers hesitating to offer ideas during meetings. People measuring their worth based on titles rather than contributions. A company could survive inefficient systems. It could recover from bad quarters and missed targets. But a culture built on intimidation quietly damaged everything beneath the surface. Emily understood that better than most. Years earlier, she had inherited a struggling manufacturing company from her father. Revenue had not been the biggest problem. Leadership had been. Within 3 years, she transformed the organization by changing one simple principle. Respect became non-negotiable. Profits followed naturally. Standing in Hawthorne Technologies now, she saw the same warning signs she had recognized before. Jennifer continued speaking, unaware that every sentence strengthened Emily's assessment. People spend years working toward executive opportunities, Jennifer said. They do not simply wander into them. Several managers standing nearby nodded in agreement. Emily looked toward a young employee organizing documents near the wall. The woman immediately lowered her eyes when Jennifer glanced in her direction. Emily noticed. Jennifer did not. "Tell me something," Emily said calmly. Jennifer appeared surprised. That Emily had spoken first. "What? How do you decide who deserves opportunity?" Jennifer smiled confidently. "Performance, credentials, professionalism." Emily nodded. "And appearance?" For the first time all afternoon, Jennifer hesitated. The pause lasted only a second, but several people noticed it. Then she recovered quickly. "Appearance reflects professionalism." Emily made no comment. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Across the executive floor, employees were no longer pretending not to watch. The tension had become impossible to ignore. Jennifer sensed it too. Her pride would not allow her to back down. "I think this conversation is over," she announced. Then she turned toward one of the managers standing nearby. "Call security if necessary. We cannot have unauthorized people wandering executive spaces." A hush fell across the floor. Several employees looked shocked. Others looked away. Emily simply reached into her handbag, removed her notebook once more, and calmly wrote another observation. The company was revealing exactly what she had come to see. The request to involve security changed the atmosphere immediately. Even Jennifer seemed satisfied by the reaction it produced. Authority often felt strongest when displayed publicly, and at that moment she believed everyone on the executive floor had just witnessed a final victory. What she did not understand was that several employees were no longer watching Emily. They were watching Jennifer, watching how she handled someone who appeared powerless, watching what happened when respect became conditional. A manager standing nearby shifted uncomfortably. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "perhaps this is not necessary." Jennifer turned toward him. "Actually, it is." Her tone left little room for discussion. "We have policies for a reason." The manager fell silent. Across the hallway, Rachel Miller had arrived carrying a folder for her supervisor. The moment she saw Emily surrounded by executives, concern appeared on her face. She stopped near the elevators and listened. Other employees gathered discreetly behind glass office walls. Nobody wanted to become involved, but nobody wanted to miss what happened next either. Emily closed her notebook and slipped it back into her handbag. Her expression remained calm. Not defensive, not angry, simply observant. That calmness unsettled Jennifer more than she would ever admit. Most people responded to public embarrassment with frustration or fear. Emily responded with patience. And patience often frightened people who depended on intimidation. "I am going to ask one final time," Jennifer said. "Who authorized your access to this floor?" Emily looked toward the large windows overlooking the city skyline. Late afternoon sunlight stretched across the buildings outside, bathing the executive corridor in gold. Then she returned her attention to Jennifer. "You will have your answer soon." Several employees exchanged confused looks. Jennifer laughed. "That is not how this works." Emily offered a small smile. "Perhaps not today." The response generated another wave of whispers. Jennifer's jaw tightened. She had spent years building influence within the company. She knew every department head, every executive assistant, every board liaison. She prided herself on understanding organizational hierarchy better than anyone. Yet somehow she could not place this woman. That uncertainty was beginning to bother her. A security officer finally arrived from the lobby. He approached respectfully, clearly confused by the situation. "Is there a problem?" Jennifer immediately stepped forward. "Yes. This individual has been wandering executive areas all day without providing proper identification." The officer turned toward Emily. "Ma'am, may I see your visitor credentials?" Emily reached into her handbag. For a brief moment, several employees expected everything to end. Perhaps she would finally reveal an identification badge. Perhaps there had been a misunderstanding. Instead, Emily removed a small envelope and glanced at it before returning it to her bag. "Not yet," she said politely. The confusion deepened. Even the security officer looked uncertain. Jennifer stared at her in disbelief. "Not yet." Emily nodded. "There is a meeting scheduled soon. I believe it will answer everyone's questions." Jennifer folded her arms. "You are not attending any executive meeting." Emily's eyes met hers. "We shall see." The confidence in her voice sent a ripple through the crowd. For the first time all day, several employees noticed something they had previously overlooked. Emily did not sound like a visitor. She did not sound like an applicant. She sounded like someone entirely comfortable being exactly where she was. The realization spread slowly. Not certainty, just doubt. And doubt was dangerous. Jennifer sensed the shift immediately. Determined to regain control, she pointed toward the elevators. Escort her downstairs. The security officer hesitated. Emily looked around the executive floor one final time. At the managers. At the employees watching from their offices. At Rachel, standing quietly near the elevators. Then she smiled and stepped forward voluntarily. "That will not be necessary," she said. "I was about to leave anyway." A hush fell across the corridor. Because deep down, whether they understood it or not, everyone felt the same thing. The real meeting had not started yet. But something important was coming. By 4 o'clock, a company-wide message appeared in employee inboxes across Hawthorne Technologies. Mandatory executive assembly. Attendance required for all managers, directors, and department leaders. The announcement spread through the building with remarkable speed. Employees whispered in hallways. Speculation moved from office to office. Some assumed it involved the rumored acquisition that had dominated conversations for months. Others expected a restructuring announcement. Nobody connected the meeting to the quiet woman in the gray cardigan, least of all Jennifer Brooks. Standing inside the executive conference room, Jennifer reviewed notes for the presentation she expected to give later that week. Although the strange encounter from earlier remained in the back of her mind, she convinced herself the matter had been resolved. After all, the woman had left. Security had been involved. The situation was finished. At least that was what Jennifer believed. Outside, the atmosphere throughout the building felt different. Employees filed toward the main executive auditorium, overlooking the Chicago skyline. Rows of leather chairs gradually filled. Department heads took their usual seats. Senior managers exchanged nervous smiles. Even Rachel Miller found herself invited to attend after her supervisor received a last-minute request for additional staff presence. The room buzzed with uncertainty. Then, precisely at 4:30, the doors opened. Hawthorne Technologies' Chief Executive Officer Michael Reynolds entered alongside several board members. Immediately, conversation stopped. Michael was known for his calm demeanor and careful words. Yet tonight his expression carried unusual gravity. Behind him walked 3 corporate attorneys, followed by 2 investment representatives. The sight alone caused a ripple of concern throughout the room. Jennifer sat near the front and straightened in her chair. This was clearly significant. Michael stepped to the podium and adjusted the microphone. The room fell completely silent. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the fading afternoon sunlight, while hundreds of eyes focused on the stage. "Thank you all for attending on short notice," Michael began. "As many of you know, Hawthorne Technologies has undergone a major ownership transition over the past several months." A murmur moved through the audience. Michael continued, "Today marks the official completion of that process." Jennifer exchanged a glance with the operations manager seated beside her. The acquisition rumors had been true. The individual assuming majority ownership requested something unusual, Michael said. Rather than relying solely on reports, presentations, and executive summaries, she wanted to understand this company personally. She wanted to experience our culture firsthand. Several board members nodded. A strange feeling began forming in Jennifer's stomach. She could not explain why. Michael paused and looked across the audience. She spent today observing, listening, learning. The room grew quieter with every word. Jennifer felt her pulse quicken. Somewhere in the back rows, Rachel suddenly sat forward. She had a feeling she already knew where this was heading. Michael glanced toward the auditorium entrance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Please join me in welcoming the new majority owner and chairwoman of Hawthorne Technologies." Every head turned toward the doors. A hush fell across the auditorium, so complete that even the air seemed to stop moving. Then the doors slowly opened. The woman who stepped through the auditorium doors was wearing the same gray cardigan, the same simple blouse, and carrying the same worn brown handbag she had carried all day. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Emily Carter walked forward with quiet confidence as hundreds of employees stared in disbelief. The transformation was not in her appearance. It was in their understanding. Suddenly, every conversation from earlier that day replayed in their minds. Every assumption, every judgment, every dismissive glance. Michael Reynolds stepped away from the podium and greeted her with a respectful handshake. "Welcome, Chairwoman Carter," he said. The words echoed through the auditorium like a thunderclap. A collective gasp spread across the room. Jennifer Brooks froze completely. The color drained from her face. Her eyes widened as realization crashed into her all at once. The woman she had questioned, mocked, and repeatedly tried to remove from executive spaces was standing beside the chief executive officer as the new majority owner of Hawthorne Technologies. Around her, managers exchanged stunned looks. Some stared at Emily. Others stared at Jennifer. Nobody knew where to look. Emily accepted the handshake and turned toward the audience. She remained exactly as she had been throughout the entire day. Calm, composed, unshaken. The silence became almost unbearable. Rachel Miller sat near the middle rows with tears forming in her eyes. She was one of the few people in the room who had treated Emily with simple kindness. Now she understood why that conversation had felt so different. Michael returned to the podium. Over the past several months, Emily Carter acquired controlling ownership through Carter Holdings. Before assuming leadership, she requested one thing. She wanted to personally experience our company culture, without titles, introductions, or special treatment. Another wave of realization moved through the room. Employees began looking at one another. They finally understood why she had spent the day walking through departments, sitting in common areas, and speaking with staff members. She had not been lost. She had been evaluating them. Jennifer's hands trembled slightly in her lap. Her mind raced through every interaction. Every sarcastic remark, every public humiliation, every time she assumed she was protecting executive standards. She remembered Emily calmly writing notes into that small notebook. Suddenly those notes felt terrifying. Michael continued. Most organizations measure success through quarterly reports and financial performance. Emily believes culture matters just as much. Then he smiled and stepped aside. The auditorium remained silent as Emily approached the podium. Hundreds of eyes followed her. Jennifer could barely meet her gaze. Emily rested her hands lightly on the podium and looked across the room. Her eyes moved over executives, managers, assistants, and employees alike. She recognized every face. She remembered every interaction. Yet there was no anger in her expression, no triumph, no desire to embarrass anyone. That somehow made the moment even more powerful. Finally, she spoke. "Today I learned many things about this company." Her voice was calm and steady. "I met talented people, hardworking people, generous people." She paused. "And I also learned which people only offer respect when they believe someone has power." The room went completely silent. Several employees lowered their eyes. Jennifer felt as though the floor beneath her chair had disappeared. For the first time all day, she truly understood the magnitude of her mistake. The silence lingered for several seconds after Emily finished speaking. No one rushed to respond. No one dared interrupt. The weight of her words settled over the auditorium like a storm cloud that had finally arrived after being visible on the horizon all day. Emily allowed the moment to breathe before reaching into her handbag and removing the small notebook that had accompanied her throughout the building. Jennifer immediately recognized it. Her stomach tightened. She remembered every time Emily had opened it. Every note she had written, every observation quietly recorded while others assumed she had no influence. Emily placed the notebook on the podium. "This company has extraordinary potential," she said. "I met employees who support one another, who share credit, who encourage growth, and who represent the values I want Hawthorne Technologies to stand for." Several employees looked relieved. Others sat forward, listening carefully. Emily turned a page. "I also witnessed something else." The room became silent again. "I witnessed talented employees being overlooked. I witnessed leaders who confused authority with respect. I witnessed people being judged before they were known." Jennifer lowered her eyes. She already knew what was coming. Emily glanced toward the middle rows. "Rachel Miller." Rachel's eyes widened. "Yes, ma'am." Emily smiled warmly. "Thank you for your kindness today." Rachel looked completely stunned. "I was only being polite." Emily nodded. "Exactly." A ripple of emotion moved through the room. Then Emily looked toward Michael Reynolds. "Over the next 30 days, I will be conducting a complete leadership review." Several executives shifted nervously. Emily continued. Promotions will no longer be based solely on results. Character will matter. Respect will matter. How people treat others when there is nothing to gain will matter. A hush fell across the auditorium. Then Emily turned one final page in her notebook. Jennifer could barely breathe. There is one leadership decision that will take effect immediately. The room seemed frozen in anticipation. Emily's voice remained calm. Jennifer Brooks is being removed from her position as Director of Human Resources effective today. No one reacted at first. The announcement was so direct, so measured, that it took several seconds to fully register. Jennifer closed her eyes. There was no anger in Emily's voice. No humiliation. No revenge. Just accountability. Emily continued. Leadership is not a title. It is a responsibility. When that responsibility is abused, trust disappears. Jennifer slowly stood. For the first time all day, she seemed smaller than before. She looked toward Emily and opened her mouth as if searching for words. None came. There was nothing left to say. Emily gave a respectful nod. Not a victorious one. A human one. Jennifer quietly left the auditorium. No applause followed. No celebration. The lesson was bigger than a single person. As the doors closed behind her, Emily looked across the audience one last time. The future of this company will not be built by the people with the loudest voices. It will be built by the people who understand dignity. The room remained silent. But this time it was a different silence. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Understanding. Outside the windows, the last light of the Chicago sunset reflected across the skyline as employees sat quietly absorbing what they had witnessed. And on that day, Hawthorne Technologies learned a lesson that no training seminar, handbook, or executive presentation could ever teach. The true measure of a person is revealed by how they treat someone they believe has no power at all.